Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Linda Smith, and I'm faculty attached to the Department of English, but I've had the very good fortune to be able to work across campus with the KAMS program particularly. I've had worked with sciences, and it's been a lot of fun, and out of those varied experiences kind of has evolved our reason for being here today. We had trouble actually deciding on a specific New York Times article because our overarching theme, of course, is education in Kansas, and you don't have to look very far to find numbers and numbers of articles and issues that demand our attention today. But we did decide to choose one, and it was actually a compilation written by the editorial board of the New York Times. The publication date is December 14th, 2013, and the title is "Even Gifted Students Can't Keep Up." And I do have copies of this article for you so that you can, those are takeaways for you. I also took the liberty of making a list of other New York Times articles that also speak to the issue that we're going to talk about today. From the article itself, just a couple of quotes that kind of summarize where we are with gifted education nationally, and perhaps more critically now in Kansas, if you've been following legislative efforts in that area. The nation has to enlarge its pool of the best and brightest science and math students and encourage them to pursue careers that will keep the country competitive, but that is not happening. Not only do average American students perform poorly compared to those in other countries, but so do the very best students, who tend to languish in the middle of the pack. There is an estimated 3 million gifted students K through 12 in the United States, and that represents about 6% of the total student population. Some schools do have challenging curriculum, but far and away the majority do not. A little of backstory before I turn this over to the team. In fall of 2013, I was delightfully surprised to walk into a Comp 1 classroom and not really know exactly what had happened. I felt like I was kind of in the twilight zone of education, if you will. They were so different. Collectively, their personalities were so remarkable. But because we do, assessment essays at the first, it took me about 3 days to figure out why they were so different. And it was precisely because they were all 16. And they were energized, and they were all members of the KAMS program. We always have a little banter at the beginning, at the end of our classes, and that banter tended to focus on a central theme, which was their shared experiences in gifted education across the state of Kansas, in some other states, and even in Korea. So it was kind of a dynamic conversation that came to dominate our conversations, really. And for me, as a teacher, it was that teachable moment when I realized that for these students to really learn at the level that they needed to learn, I was going to have to do some different things with the curriculum. I kept the goals and objectives for Comp 1 in place, absolutely, but we turned that Comp 1 class on its ear. And those first 18 students in Comp 1 used the semester to do a feasibility study that was heavily researched to determine how and why gifted education is what it is in Kansas. And from that feasibility study, they had to come up with a proposal that would make a difference in gifted education in Kansas. And their proposal led to the development of the Kansas Gifted Education Database, which we thought was pretty cool because, we did it and it was neat. What we didn't realize was the impact it would have locally, regionally, and nationally. And that's what took us quite by surprise. Probably the most surprising was, and I can never, Darian Patchkin, who is the director of Stanford University's Gifted Education Program, had actually emailed us to ask if they could link to our site because they were so pleased with what we had accomplished, what the students had accomplished. And we've had the Director of Education, State of Nebraska, contact us to liaise. They wanted to develop their own similar type of database for Nebraska, which I think they have proceeded to do. It is exciting to know that there's a lot of interest in improving levels of education at all levels, at all grade levels and all learning ability levels. But most importantly, I think we have perhaps underserved our gifted population. It is, of course, as you know, historically, it is the one educational service that is mandated, but is not funded, leaving a great deal of latitude to individual districts and in many cases individual schools. And therein lies the reason that we have such variation in the qualities of those programs. So I am going to introduce the team now. We have with us Joey Schmidt, who is a KAMS senior who will graduate in May. Joey has been working with this project for about a year now, aggressively for 2 semesters, but he actually started the spring of 2015 a little bit. I also have our newest member, Braden Allmond, who is a KAMS second semester junior, who's been a real surge of energy for our group. And then last but not least, Kayce Feldkamp, who is one of the original team members. She was in that Comp 1 class in fall of 2013, one of the 18 students who actually decided that their heart and their passion lied in education in general, but specifically trying to improve what's being done for students who want to do more while they're in those K through 12 classes, particularly middle school and high school. Joey?
Well, at this point, many of you may wonder why any of us want to join the KAMS program, why we are so interested in this, and why we want to continue the site, even though it's already up, it's running, it's doing fine on its own. Well, it is because, as she stated, the gifted education throughout the state and throughout the country is mandated but not very much focused on at all. They believe, and this is something that's stated in the article, many believe that, well, the gifted students will do fine on their own, and oftentimes they don't. If left alone, most kids are just going to do the easiest path that's laid out before them, and that's what many gifted students do when just left to their own devices. They don't strive forward, they don't have, resources to move forward on their own, and without resources provided by their schools, they coast through the programs that they have and move along easily until they eventually do hit a wall that they can't just coast through. For many of us, that was KAMS. You can't coast through here. It doesn't work. And that was my personal experience as well. I was given a gifted education, so to speak, throughout middle school years, but it was very underfunded. There wasn't a lot to do. It was mainly just a time waster to, pretend that there was some amount of gifted education being offered, despite, what was actually being offered. So, what would be a way to fix this, is what many of us have wondered, since entering these programs ourselves. Well, there's a lot of resources out there for advanced learning, for advancing yourself without the need of a teacher, guiding you along. You can figure these things out for yourself, and many of them are on the internet, but they're hard to find. They're not just, there's not really one easy way to find all of them. So that is what the original purpose of the project that you mentioned was to make it possible for students to advance their learning on their own. And that is the purpose of the KGED site, to give sort of a gateway to your own advanced learning, your own way of propelling yourself forward, and I guess giving yourself more education than you would just find simply by coasting through classes and taking the easy route. And that was the idea of the project in the first place, and which led to the creation of the site, which I'm going to let Kayce tell you about.
Yeah, so our recognition of the problem started when we realized that teachers in rural communities, they teach gifted programs at many schools usually, and this is especially true in western Kansas, that they have a gifted teacher who goes to 8 different schools during the day. It's like
sometimes 13.
13.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a lot. And so they're very limited on how much time they have to gather stuff and to get the most out of their class time that they have. So we decided that by gathering all these resources, it would save teachers, gifted teachers, time. And so we had 4 groups when we originally started. It was web design, photo and video, outreach, and research. And I was head of the research group. And basically, we compiled the main content of the website. Together, we gathered over 200 free resources for parents, teachers, and students. The database provides coursework, lesson plans, and ideas that would benefit students. I know we keep saying, you know, gifted, but this isn't just for gifted students. It's for like any student who wants to take their learning further. And so, we did a lot with open educational resources, which are a big thing now. And so from there, the website was created. We've done a lot of outreach and stuff like that. In the 2014 of spring, we went to the Northwest Kansas Educational Service in Oakley, and we talked to them about our website and what they thought, because it was a group of people who were gifted teachers, and we wanted their ideas on what they would want to see. And then we did one in Phillipsburg, and it was kind of the same thing, just getting ideas from what they wanted. We've also done the Kansas Gifted and Talented Conference in Kansas City, which is a really big thing. And so that's a national and international conference.
They advertise it as an international.
So that's a big one. We've also met with people who are going to be students at Fort Hays who are going to be teachers or going into education. That way they know before they even get out there what they have to use and what they can use in their classrooms, and kind of how to approach helping a gifted student and things like that. So.
Well, you've heard the conception for the site, the idea of it, and the plan for it, and now we're going to show
You want to pull it up?
the actual site on the. Did you do that?
Yeah.
No, it's fine. Well, anyways, while we're getting this set up, I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to show you. So I was given the opportunity to find new ways to expand the site and think of how we can improve on it and find ways to make it more stable and better for people in the future when they want to use it. So as it stands now, the site is, there we go. The site is like this, and it's really neato. It's really cool. There's a lot of stuff you can do. There is resources for parents, students, and teachers, and on the home there's a video for the KGD original team and people that had talked about their experiences in gifted education and kind of why the site was created. But the day-to-day of the site sort of looks like one of us on the team opening up a computer and going to our site statistics and seeing how many people have visited the site that week or that day, and exploring comments and questions for the site, which you can submit to us via this contact link. And so what we do every day is we go through those comments, and sometimes there's not one, sometimes there are a few new ones in a day. It's kind of exciting when people from Nebraska want to talk to you, or people from Stanford send you an email and say, hey, can we put this on our site, because it's really cool. And that's exciting for me personally. I'm sure it's exciting for everyone on the team who goes through that.
We have about 79 views per week averaging
Right.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And 79 views per week, and some of those are new. I'm pretty sure one week the highest I saw were 52 new views in a week, which is a very high number for such a small site that just kind of came out of a English comp class for me. But
Hey.
but so that's our goal for the site on a day-to-day basis, is to just maintain it and keep looking at the things that are being sent to us and the comments being made on the site. On a month-to-month basis, what we'd like to do is add more links and resources for people to explore, because the resources that are on there now are great, and there are a lot of them, but there are more out there on the net to find and more out there to ask permission to put on our site and more for people to access. because as Joey said and as Kayce said earlier, some of these things that are out on the website, they can really improve your education. You can really learn a great deal from these resources, but they're difficult to find. And our website is a hub for these resources, so you can go to the link, go to resources, go to students, go to fun activities, go to math and computer, and find things about math and computers. Like all these games and all these informative websites that'll just take you places that would have been difficult to find on your own.
I want to interject here too.
Okay.
Kayce could be bolder, but her team initially, this is important because every source, every link that's included on this website is a free and open resource. And so the team made absolutely certain that we had user rights and that those rights could be conveyed to others who visit the site. And so this as a site that collects all of these best practices and best tools for helping students advance their learning is a really valuable tool, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, it is a really valuable tool, and as I was saying, we want to add new links every month so that way people who've been on the site for a while and who visit it every so often can see new things that they haven't seen before, and so that way also people who are new to the site will see things that are different the second time than from the first time they visited. As a semester goal of the team, we'd like to implement a featured element on the homepage that'll have all the new links that we add. That will be a quick place to go to if you're someone who's explored the site for a very long time and who kind of knows the layout and knows everything that's on there. It'll be a quick place to look and say, oh, these things are new. I should look at these because I've seen all the other things. And KGED is just a fantastic website. It's a fantastic hub for information, and it's something that I wish I had known about when I was in high school. I would have been, I guess, a freshman or maybe an 8th grader in 2013. Anyways, it was very common for me to not have assignments in class because I'd already have them completed and I'd have so much free time just to either read or try and not cause trouble in class, which is difficult to do for some students. And so I feel like if I had had this site, if I had known about this site, if my teachers had said to me, hey, when you get done with your assignment, go to this site and do this at this link, I probably would have learned a lot more in school. And maybe not a lot more, but I would have spent the time in school learning like I should have been doing instead of whatever it was I was doing. Because I feel every moment you spend in school should be a moment you have learned something. It should be time spent in education for education's purpose to gain more knowledge. And every moment you don't is a waste of time for the student, for the teacher, and for the parents that are paying for them to be there. And that's why I think KGED is such a great site, because it can just soak up the time that the student may have if they just excel at a certain class and just get through all their assignments. And it's a great way for the teacher to just allow the student to explore their interests. And I just think it's a really great site, and in closing, I wish that I had had it when I was in high school.
So I have a question. So this isn't just for gifted students. It could be for anyone who might be struggling. I have two children.
Mm-hmm.
One is struggling in reading, and one, she's not struggling in math, but she's only testing at a 75%. For everything else, she's a 90% or higher. So this is something to look into.
One of the realizations that we made early on when the students were doing the feasibility study and trying to just gather resources that helped inform our knowledge base on gifted education in Kansas was that, funding, of course, is always going to be an issue. We can't fix funding. We can't fix the legislature, obviously. But what we can try to do is supplement what's available to parents, teachers, and students, and just kind of get the word out. Also, what we're very aggressively trying, and delighted to have the privilege and the opportunity, we've become hard and fast presenters every semester in some key education classes in the College of Education, so that we are working one-on-one with students as they prepare to go out and student teach. And I know they alluded to that, but that is a central part of our service, our mission, if you will, is to touch base with those pre-professional teachers before they get out into the classroom, and that has been very successful, thanks in large part to Dr. Robert Scott, who would be here today, but they're honoring, and Paul Adams, who would be here today too, but they're honoring the Kansas Gifted Teacher, or Kansas Teacher of the Year today. Also, Dr. Valerie Zelinka has welcomed us into her classes to visit with them. And so, but you're absolutely right, it's not just for gifted, because oftentimes the truth is, gifted students aren't properly identified, and that's part of the problem. They are seen often as the class clown, the troublemaker. They are often misdiagnosed. It hasn't, in fact, it still happens. Who am I kidding? Send them to the counselor. Counselors go to see a doctor because this kid has ADHD and he needs drugs. And really, it's not, it's, you know, there are, of course, ADHD does exist. I'm not going to say it doesn't. But many times, these kids, if they were challenged on a different level, one that matched their skill sets and their passion, because if you can, as a teacher, if you can tap into the passion of that student, you've got them. And that's what we all strive to do. But again, if we look at public schools today, those folks are overworked, underpaid, over-challenged, and it's hard to find time in the class time of each day to meet the needs of every student. And so the Kansas Gifted Education Database is the student's way, our student's way, the team's way of trying to provide a support system for those folks. And one thing I don't think we showed was that there's also information here for parents so that they can help identify what kind of kid do I have. Maybe they've gotten so many calls from the principal's office, they're starting to think there must be something wrong with their student, their child. But actually, if you read through the criteria of how to identify giftedness in your child, that's very helpful. It helps the parent better understand how to meet that child's needs and have a better, more articulate conversation with the educators in the school. And sometimes there's a breakdown between those conversations, you know. And so, back in the mid-1990s, I was a school board member for, well, actually, started in the 80s, so I was there about 11 years. And that was at a time when the Kansas Department of Education had their Confidence in Kansas Public Schools initiative. Little, you know, apple with a sunflower in the center. And we had problems back then. I'm not going to say we didn't, but I think that those challenges are certainly diminished in comparison to the challenges that education faces in Kansas today. And so part of what we hope to do is continue to build this resource, but mostly get the word out too, so that everyone knows there are other opportunities. I spoke today with Valerie Brown Cougar, who is a graduate of Fort Hays State, and she is a gifted facilitator through Oakley's consortium. And they have no idea what's going to happen next because of things that are happening with House Bill 2292, and if you haven't read that, please do. But I think, does anybody else have questions? Because I could talk about this forever because it's a passion.
Well, I have a question. So how have you been able, how is this sustainable? That's the first question. And then what if somebody wants to get involved in this, if they're passionate about education, gifted education, how, is there a way
we have been
get
trying to
involved?
build team membership, and we had initially thought we would keep it KAMS only because it, you know, really it originated with the KAMS population. But we haven't had a lot of folks jump up and say, yes, I want to be part of that. So Dr. Valerie Zelinka actually has brought forward 2 students in her education classes. Those are students who are preparing to go out and be teachers. One's secondary, I think, and one is L.Ed. So I think we're going to open up our membership. But yeah, send me an email because we have a lot of things that we would like to do, but we don't have the physical capability to do it, you know. We met with Dr. Martin last April and presented our website and some ideas. And she, of course, turned us on our ears because she had ideas of her own, which included why didn't we do the research to see what would happen if the delivery of gifted services was inverted, so that instead of one gifted facilitator going to 18 different schools and spending 30 minutes maybe with each of those students a week, what if those students were brought on site to a gifted facility, you know? And so the numbers are there. Dr. Keith Dreiling has the software, so we can plug it in and we can do what we need to do. Dr. Martin awaits. We just haven't had the time to do it. But to see if, in fact, there would be a cost savings to do that. And we don't know because we haven't had a chance to really perform all of the analytics that are needed to put that forward. But Dr. Martin said, give me the numbers and I'll get you in Sam Brownback's office. That alone is frightening. But we're equally challenged if we just had more bodies to help share the wealth of the research.
And you could use designers, you could use
We can
analytical
use,
people, you could
yeah.
use, it just doesn't have to be.
Math, business, I mean, that's the thing, it's like, this started out such a kind of simple idea, and the potential for the simple idea has grown far beyond any of our expectations. So, yeah. So if you know of anyone, send them my way. Linda Smith, I've been here long enough, it's still L. Smith at FHSU, so no hyphens or underscores or numbers. Easy to find. Yeah. Other questions? Suggestions? Oh.
Do you have plans for evaluating the program to the site? I mean, a listing is great, but if I'm a parent or a student, even, go to this site, there's this list this long and it's going to get bigger. I have no idea what to do. And even, is this site aimed at elementary students, middle school, high school students? If I'm a high school student, I don't want to do an elementary site game. I want to do this. Is there any sense, or even evaluate each site?
Yes, we talked about having a narrative
I mean, have
for
you
each of the links.
Are the links evaluated by the team?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So we can.
And we had initially talked about doing elementary, middle school, and high school, and the team at that time decided against that because that presumes that you can categorize that child in that level. And that's perhaps part of the problem now in public education is categorization. But that's what we have to do because education is systematized. And you know, the whole process of education, the history of it and its application is systematic. It's almost like a big machine. And we have to have our categories.
But you wouldn't want an elementary student to click on MIT's open courseware lecture versus, you know, I don't know
Well,
about this.
but why not?
Why not?
I know what you're saying, and that's why we did have a good conversation about the need for a narrative for each of the links that gives an overview, kind of an assessment, if you will, of content. And so, and that could make reference to grade appropriateness, I suppose. Look at the face. No, it's not. But you know, because our goal is not to try to continue that categorization of students, but rather let their love of learning and their desire to learn more.
It's just efficiencies in terms of.
Oh, well,
open up exploring it.
Yes.
The site this long.
That's true, in terms of, especially for parents who are going to want to have that kind of reference. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. Narratives.
Yeah, we have them. They just.
They're not up yet. Yeah, we're working on it. Great. Other questions? That's a good.
I have another question.
Excellent. And you can address the guys too.
Well, my kids, during computer class, they go to Olafton Elementary, and then they go to students, and then they go to computers, because they're in the computer class. It sends them a link to Nickelodeon, and it gives them like 55 Nickelodeon games that they can choose from. I think something like this would be much more learning-wise than like my kids coming home saying that they play the Lego game. I mean, I know they're one from one of those iPads, but it irritates the crud at me when my kids go, oh yeah, look what I can do, and they go to this, and they go to this website, and I'm like, so you're playing? Like, really? I'd rather have a playing as in something that's going to challenge them playing than like.
And I'm not familiar with the Nickelodeon games,
Right.
but it is true that a student who's having fun is a student more likely to learn. So I don't know what the principles are behind that
I don't know
Nickelodeon
either.
games, but some of the math concepts are gamified. You know.
Yeah.
Game theory is becoming huge in education.
Mhm.
So for a reason, because that's our student population. That's your kids, that's my kids, my grandkids. Yeah. You have to hit them where they live if you want to take them where you want them to be, I think. Yeah. In closing for this, the New York Times article that we selected, one of the last sentence, in fact, is, "There is no shortage of good ideas, but proof that they work, along with the money and will to back them up, remains lacking. A disservice to the students to whom the future depends." So I think that's kind of part of our mission is the realization that, you know, we can't change funding, we can't change government, we can't change our legislatures, but we can do our very best to get the word out and help those teachers in the field who are feeling quite inundated right now. I spent about 30 minutes on the phone with Valerie before coming over here to the library, and these people are in teaching because they love it. They love teaching. They love seeing that spark in the minds of kids, and it would be nice if we can kind of get our state of Kansas back in line to provide at least verbal lip service, if you will, to acknowledge the values that they bring to our kids. Any other questions? Thank you very much. I do have handouts. Please take them, including all of your legislative contacts for those who wrote and are supporting Substitute House Bill 2292. And honestly, if you haven't read it, please read it. It's very serious business. Kind of makes you wonder who's leading the parade.